Hello and welcome to another Bobcast episode, coming at you with first the two Velaryon players, which also have a time lapse of a drawing of Driftmark as well as the Tower of the Hand, brought to you by Ray. And I'm gonna have that on the screen at the same time. And then my second discussion was with our done player TortoiseTT, who played Prince Darren Targaryen in the AtD Endgame, and the two of us sit down and have a long conversation on the Endgame itself. For anyone who was around for that and might be interested, it's a pretty nice conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy them as much as I do, and see you in the next one. Hello, and I am back here at the Bobcast with Mia and Ray, our Velaryon players. How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. You guys enjoying Game Start as much as I am, or?
Oh yeah, it's super fun since I don't work during the summer, so the game started like at the perfect moment for me to just literally wake up, do replies, go to sleep. It's great.
And I've been enjoying it as much as I can, having to handle some things behind the scenes. But from when I actually sit down and start writing, it's been great.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad to hear you guys, and especially I know this is not your first iteration for both of you. Just for for people who don't know you guys maybe as well, do like you guys just kind of want to like quickly break down what houses you might have played in the past, and what it is that you might have done, just so people can kind of have an idea. I'll let you
Yeah,
guys
Mia
choose who
can
goes
go
first.
first. Yeah, Mia can go first.
Yeah, I'll go first as the youngest. So I joined these games in 7K as Falwell, picking up after Crash, with Ray as my lovely Lannister. And then in COB, I played Farwind at game start, briefly hopped over to play Ashford with a relative, and then back to Farwind. And then, of course, in AtD, I was Dustin.
Yeah. So as Mia alluded to, I was also in 7K. I started out as Beesbury because I got recruited to these games by Meadows, who I don't think goes by Meadows anymore, right?
No, he does not.
Um, yeah, because he's no longer Meadows, but got recruited by Meadows. And the game was basically full when I wanted to join. But Beesbury was open, and I wanted to sort of play like a rich reach house, so that was perfect. So I claimed the bees, and then Lannister opened up, and I do like the Lannisters. They're pretty much my favorite house. So I was like, I'm new, but screw it, I'll apply. I got it. Played Lannister for the rest of the game. Messed around with Mia and everybody else in the West for the end of 7K. I skipped COB, which I have heard was not the worst one to have skipped, so it happens. And then yeah, came back for ATD and did pretty much the exact same thing as I did with COB, and started as Beesbury and then switched to Lannister when the Lannister player had had enough of them. So I'm not planning on doing that this game though, obviously, because I'm not Beesbury right now.
You're
So
breaking the cycle. Congrats.
yeah.
And so, with the two of you playing the same house, what is it that sort of drew you guys to doing this house in particular together? And who sort of reached out first? Whose idea was it?
So I wanted to play this house because I wanted people with those, Valyrian features. I wanted the silver hair and purple eyes as a part of the house, as a part of a story that I wanted to tell. So honestly, like Celtigar would have worked as well, but I prefer Valyrian, obviously, just because like the show made them really popular and they're a really interesting house. So I had expressed that I was interested in doing that. Mia got wind that I was interested, and reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I'm also interested in this. Are you down for a co-claim?" And since I just wanted to mess around with a Second Son storyline, I was like, yeah, absolutely. You can do all the hard stuff and I can write my drama. So it worked out really well.
Not a bad setup
And,
then. Okay.
and then I had always liked Velaryon. I had applied for it in COB and did not get it, and then I applied for it in AtD and didn't get it, so I decided I'm gonna try to break my streak and go for it in this game. But I was a big like reader of Fire and Blood when I was first into these games, and Fire and Blood, especially the Rogue Prince little novellas, have so much focus on Velaryon and just, Hull, Driftmark, High Tide. Plus, I'd always played naval claims or naval adjacent claims when looking at things. So even Falwell had like a little brief storyline where they had 400 sailors because they were trying to build ships in their river port.
Okay.
And one of my main characters there was a sailor. So it's been a long time coming.
So you decided to go for one of the biggest non-Ironborn naval claims as well.
Yeah,
Just
I tried the Ironborn. I really loved the Ironborn, but I wasn't wanting to go there and have that same sort of spin on, a naval claim. Being a King's Landing naval claim versus an Ironborn naval claim is similar, but there's a lot of important differences.
different coast as well too, right?
Yeah.
I know I'm saying this and risking it having to be retconned or whatever, but I don't know if I would qualify as a large naval claim, to be completely honest. But that's neither here nor there.
Is that maybe changing, or is there? This won't be out for a couple of days.
No mod leaks.
No worries. Maybe I will wait a little bit until something comes out.
Confirm or deny.
And then, so
as of right now, I would not say a major anything claim. Honestly, we're kind of poor and weak, so
it's okay.
Good thing I'm doing this for the aesthetics because you can't take that from us.
We have a lot of passion.
Yeah.
I found out I'm also fairly poor as well too today. I was like, finally looked at the econ sheet and I was like, oh, I'm not as rich as I thought I was. But it's probably my fault. I have 3 vassals, so that might be on me. But is there anybody in your guys' region that you guys have sort of worked out some storylines or something that could be like progressed forward that people can maybe keep an eye out for? Or are you guys going to kind of just see how things go with, the War of Ninepenny Kings and everything in King's Landing and the Blackwater, just to sort of see how it unfolds?
I mean, for me, part of, the exciting part about Game Start is I wasn't really around for the other game starts in the games I was in. I always joined a little bit behind the curve. So I never really got to build a house and really be like, okay, what are these characters' places in this world? Who do they know? Who are they associated with? So one thing I really wanted for my main character was a Baratheon wife. I wanted the black hair and the really strong genetics to have our daughter just have completely skipped out on the Velaryon looks. So I did, want to set that up in particular, but for the rest of them too, having these backstories that really make it seem more like a real world and not just like, people who started existing 2 days ago but have rather lived entire lives up until game start, is one of the most interesting parts of the games to me, at least.
Which is a hard thing to do as well too, for anyone, even not just younger, newer players, but everyone.
It's hard to a certain extent. I think that sometimes there are expectations or rules that are put down in these games which are meant to make it fair for everybody, to make sure that everybody can get, some sort of connections, but then they end up sort of making it more difficult to establish connections. But we do what we can, and I think that it's it's been a pretty good round this time, in my opinion, of people figuring out who we're actually playing before we start playing them, which is important.
Well, me and Mia set up like a light connection between our houses, so
Yeah.
Mhm.
I might have killed one of you, but
That's good. That's good.
But yeah, I mean, what about for you, Mia? Like, is there sort of something that you are hoping maybe to achieve in this iteration that you haven't done before? That, you know, maybe playing the Valerians would give you an opportunity to do? Or are you kind of, like I said, just going to wait and see, and you don't really have, like, at least long-term things set up? You just more so want to see, like, ride the waves a little bit.
I have some long-term plans that I'm hoping to execute on. I mean, the current Lord Valerian is we call him Dementia Daddy, and he's kind of destined to die eventually, and was made with the idea of sort of feeding him into the mod event and seeing how he ends up. So that's definitely something that's going to happen, and then seeing, you know, the new Lord of Driftmark and stuff like that. I have some plans with Lucaries or Lucaries, however you want to pronounce that. I have some plans with him because we know that in canon he becomes essentially one of the Lickspickle Lords who just stays next to Ares and convinces him that Rhaegar and his father are kind of mid. So that's a great thing that I plan on like building with and just seeing how, because right now he's not necessarily a horrible person.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely gonna become worse. Right now he's kind of just a pick me, but eventually we're gonna get to like some fuck shit.
I don't know. He bullied Gael, so he's kind of a terrible person.
He bullied Gael, but he also helped Gael and told him he's gonna be okay. So
Uh-huh.
And
the reality of man.
is there an expiration date on Lord Damon, then, or?
There's not an expiration date. I'm just gonna sign him up for as many duels during the mod event as humanly possible. And if he doesn't die and somehow ends up killing them all, then I think he's kind of just destined to survive.
I mean, the guy, like, is he gonna get like a malice of some kind for his age, or are you just like rocking him no
Yeah,
skills?
so he has a -8 dueling malice, but
Damn.
he's he's a grand master or a tier 3 duelist. So
Uh,
+6, so he actually only has a -2
so
to
it's
his duel.
okay. I see. I see. I mean, I think that's a good way of doing it. If he was a good fighter before and now he's just old as fuck, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't know what's going on, but he does know that he's gonna try and kick your ass.
He's going to kill Melees and be like, "Ah, guys, I did it. Damon's dead. I got Damon Blackfire."
Sure thing, Grandpa. Sit down. It's time for your pills.
But having that set up allowed me to sort of have a lot of cool connections with, like, you know, former Kingsguard, current Kingsguard, etc. So there's a lot of like cool stuff I've been able to leverage by having an old man with that high of a dual skill.
And then so with being in proximity to King's Landing, it makes taking part in everything that's there a little bit easier. Who do you guys kind of anticipate will be like the Valerians who like people would be able to interact with in King's Landing? I know, who is it that's on the Kingsguard? Not the Kingsguard, sorry, the Small Council. I gotta apologize. I just read it today too as well.
Yeah. So the small council question is actually kind of interesting because technically in official terms it is the old character, it is Damon, but he obviously isn't really in a position where he can perform something like that since he literally doesn't know what day of the week it is most of the time. Um, so his son, my character, the second son, Arian, has been filling in for him on the small council. And Arian, while he is very, very good at ships, he's good at sailing and a good captain and all of that. He's pretty much bad at everything else. He is not a very level-headed person. He is not good at politics. He is not good at people necessarily. So I'm just sort of seeing how long he can coast without somebody being like, "Hold on, isn't your father supposed to be here? Why isn't it your father? And why are you doing this essentially?" So yeah, definitely already got into a fight on the small council, which is great. Because I failed at getting fired off of the small council in ATD. It didn't happen because Tem is too nice. But hopefully I can get us fired this time.
Okay, so that's what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? I did read the small council thread earlier, and I was like, I noticed that like he didn't really seem to care, and I was like, oh, okay, it's a bit different from what we normally see in people being at least somewhat
Yeah.
competent or at least interested in the position they're in.
Honestly, the small council is sort of a difficult thing to do in this style of game. I find that because there are so many people that have to interact, it ends up being very ineffective at its job, and that especially came out, I think, in ATD, where there were just so many on the Regency and then the small council, and then every single decision took 3 months for people to talk through.
Mm-hmm.
I've always kind of thought that if it could work, it would be really cool to do more of like tabletop style for the councils, where everybody in the council's like, okay, we're gonna meet at this time and we're just gonna do a voice call and we're gonna record the voice call or take notes or something. Um, and speak in character, because then it would actually be the length of a council meeting and we wouldn't have to have, because you know how it gets when you're role playing and your character has a lot to say and you write a paragraph that nobody would ever say out loud in a setting like this. Like, it's just so much dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody has to reply to every single little bit of the dialogue that you said, and then like, like the role play splits off into different threads,
Yeah,
and it's
somebody
just
replies at the same
a
time as
mess.
you, and then you're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't know you were
yeah,
replying."
it's a mess. So personally, although I did want to have Arian be the master of ships position, or at least the fill-in for it, just because he would want it as a character, because like ships are his thing. I definitely didn't want him to be like super competent at it, and I definitely don't necessarily like being on the small council. So, the position does have to be cleared up for Lucerys at some point. So it might as well be sooner rather than later, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So before, as I start sort of shifting, like we're gonna wrap up soon, I have to ask, and it normally I'd ask first canon death, but apparently we've had our first one, so I can't ask that question. But
Oh my god,
Really?
who died?
uh,
Yeah.
Talad the Tall was killed. Yeah, was killed during the hunting, I think.
No, it was the
Mm.
joust.
The
Yeah,
Joust. Oh, there you go. He's apparently a canon character. So,
Well,
but
apparently.
R.I.P. Talad, I guess.
yeah, rest in
Yeah.
peace. But in that case, who would do each of you predict might be the first major death in the War of Nine Penny Kings, or even beyond, if everyone survives somehow?
I don't know. I mean, I think in games like this, it really is all
Chance.
odds. Like, it doesn't really matter how anybody is playing their character. It's all a roll of the dice, which really makes it, an interesting type of game, because you can play your character as the most cautious, most skilled person, but like they roll a 1 and like,
That's it.
bye.
Uh,
Uh,
personally, I think Derek Fossaway is gonna get targeted by
boo.
the new archery mechs,
Boo.
and the new archery mechs are gonna delete like Tywin Lannister from existence,
Well,
and that's gonna
Derek has an archer right hand man.
exactly right. So we're gonna see like some PC get sniped from across the battlefield, and the reactions in chat are going to are going to fuel my soul for a solid 3 days.
It will happen. I do think it's gonna happen for sure. Someone's gonna get sniped, and we'll see what happens. but I think that's a good prediction, though. I hope Derek can make it somehow, but I'm okay with him dying as well, too. But I do also have plans if he survives, so. Well, guys, both of you, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with me, especially, this is the first time for me doing, two co-claimants together. So is there anything that before we go that either you, Mia, or you, Ray, either of you want to say to anyone who's listening, either about your claim or about playing, writing with you, that you just want to say now that you have the stage?
Not really. I mean, I guess I'm really excited that, I got to sort of build with Mia this setting that all of our characters are coming from. I feel like we worked really hard to establish like the Driftmark Almanac, which means that if you visit Driftmark, it's not just going to be like a servant showed you to your room. Like they're going to have names, they're going to have personalities, like they're going to like be like actual people because, I'm a history major. I kind of like how keeps our community places, right? They're like little cities. And I feel like a lot of times in these games, it's really easy to just ignore the fact that you would be around these people who are in your service, whether it be in your stables or in your guard or in your kitchen. Like you would know who they are and you would know what they were like, and you would have a certain relationship with them. So from that sort of thing to having a ship almanac to having a horse almanac to me drawing maps of both the island itself and of the keep, which has hopefully been finished by the time this comes out. That I personally, it's awkward in these games to go to somebody's keep and try to figure out like how to write in a setting that you don't have control over. So I really like being able to give access to what me and Mia have been thinking and the world building we've been doing in a really easy and accessible way. So when we invite people over, they know what's going on and they don't have to feel like they're treading on our toes or rewriting what we've done, to use some detail in their writing. So
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Ray said, I mean, Driftmark is our home, but it's also your home if you ever visit it. So, feel free to, if you ever, have somebody on Driftmark or you have somebody who's just visiting, if you want to use some of the NPCs on the almanac there to just, say you got food served by Bessie instead of by random faceless servant number 7, and just spice it up a little bit without having to fully go into your own pockets and invent stuff.
yeah. Check the map, buy a vacation home in Driftmark today, enjoy our hospitality.
We're selling timeshares. You can ask
Hmm.
where is Velaryon in the Red Keep. You can find him hiding behind Ares' skirts.
Is this a
Yep,
once in a lifetime opportunity?
Think
of
about it.
course.
How many? Look, you don't know. Driftmark might get burned down. You should buy now.
Invest now. Invest now. Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much, like I said, for sitting down, and I look forward to seeing, how the whole house turns out, once it's said and done.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having us.
Welcome to another Bobcast segment here with our done player, TortoiseTT. Dude, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm enjoying the role play we've got started, and I'm sure you've got some interesting stuff going on as well too.
hmm
And
Yeah, definitely. It's been such a fun start to the game already. So
been very busy. Like whenever I always go and like look at like the recent like comments and stuff, and there's so many people like within like even like an hour, there's like 30 replies. I'm like, damn,
holy
that's good.
shit, it's crazy. I can't keep up. I'm loving it, but I can't keep up. I have, like, more replies every day.
Well, funny enough, we're not actually here to talk about Nine Penny Kings. We're here to talk about After the Dance's Endgame,
Indeed.
which we were both a big part of.
Yeah, we
And
were the double Darrens.
possibly,
Possibly.
maybe.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be like a little bit different. It's going to be a bit more of a back and forth. So I'm not even going to be fully hosting. This is half Bobcast, half tortoise cast almost.
It's perfect. I wouldn't have named it any different.
Yeah, of course. It's a perfect name. I mean, it doesn't need any changes.
Exactly.
And so I kind of just wanted to start with my first question for you, as you know, you playing Prince Darren, the one who became king, not Darren the Daring.
Right. Well, who
Which,
became king? Who knows if he becomes
who
king? I
knows?
guess in our
Exactly.
we had
I want to know, what did you plan on having Darren do? Because when we ended the game, he was trying to hatch a dragon egg in Strong Song.
yes. My God, what a goddamn cliffhanger to drop away on. Um, so that's really interesting because the whole dragon um sort of plot at the end there was really um uh and this is real quick. I'm realizing I've never actually said most of people's usernames out loud and have just seen them spelled out. So I'm gonna go with Wiccan. That's how
Yeah, that's how
I've
I've
said it.
always said it as
Okay.
well.
That's how I've never had to pronounce it before, but so that was something that Wiccan started with the Belmores, and this whole idea that, obviously the Targaryens at this point have just lost all of their dragons, and Darren is someone who really, he considers himself a dragon. He's sort of like, you know, if I can't have a dragon to fly around on, then I'm gonna be the sort of powerful figurehead of the Targaryens. And he doesn't go as far as some others in the future, as drinking wildfire or causing the all the summer hall.
It's too fresh.
You know.
Too
Sorry, yeah,
fresh in
no,
our
I don't mean to.
minds.
I don't mean to break. Don't mean to break hearts already, but the so the whole idea with that was that essentially Darren's thinking like, all right, even though I don't want to conquer Dorne necessarily right now because of a certain love interest, I do still want to deal with essentially the first big challenge of his career. Is maybe a strange word for a royal appointment, but he wants to take down this big sort of group of rebellious peasants and bandits that have started sort of popping up, kidnapping his friends, his family, and as much as he's excited to do that on his own, he's been presented the opportunity to get the help of dragons. And he has a dragon egg and he just can't resist. So he does go to Belmore along with his friends, including some like Arthur Mooten, who are very much not happy with this idea. He follows into the Vale with the hope of finding a dormant volcano, using some of that old Belmore um, magic, and trying to hatch an egg.
And
Bring it maybe to the claw after, assuming
what
it
were you gonna
happens.
do, like game wise?
Right.
Should that have
So
happened?
right. So let's say that everything goes according to plan, and the egg hatches. Now I have a dragon. Of course, this is going to be a tiny baby dragon. He's not actually going to be able to really conquer anything right away. Um, but it is in his mind like a symbol more than anything of like, all right, you all thought the dragons were dead. You all thought our power was waning.
Here's the real
Psych.
dragon.
Yeah. And so of course, like, he would have wanted to bring it to. I think the next target was the disappearing House Brune, who I think
Mhm.
am I correct about that? Was the next stronghold that had been taken over by the rats.
Yeah, so
Um,
after Duskendale, the last one was Brune, which
yeah,
was a shame because there was no Brune player. But I was like,
yeah,
okay, well, I mean, there's not that many people, so I might as well do something with it. And essentially, yeah,
right.
the Brunes had been a part of the captured nobles, and that was the first place that
Mhm.
was taken by the rats. It was like a silent thing.
Oh, interesting.
So it
Yeah,
was something that happened like in the background, but like never made it out publicly.
right.
And so yeah, then it was Maidenpool, and then finally Duskendale.
Yeah.
And then the
Which
plan
is
was to
being
hold.
besieged. Yeah.
Yeah, it was to hold all three and sort of take that
And
area of
form
the Crown
a
Lands.
new a new republic.
Well, that's what
Or you know.
that's what they said, but
Exactly. I'm very curious about it.
well, the real plan, and it sort of evolved over time because I started planning this out in December,
Right.
when I joined the mod team because I hadn't been around for the game, and it seemed like things were kind of on the end, but like it still felt like
Mhm.
hadn't been long enough, and I was like, hey, maybe like I don't want to really play a house at this point. I'd rather do something kind of cool like this, and so
Right.
I came up actually with three endgame
Oh.
events, and then had the mod team pick which one they thought was best.
Oh, interesting. What were the other two?
So the other two were, there was one, I can get the details properly. Here, I'll cut this part out and I'll find them so I can read them out properly.
Sure.
Because they actually were pretty cool, but I don't even think they could really be used in the future. One of them was pretty outlandish.
Okay.
Um,
That's always fun though.
yeah, but hold up, here you go. After the dance, events. Okay, actually, no, I'm just gonna wing it. Whatever. I don't have them
Sure.
here.
Yeah, if you got sort of the basic ideas.
Yeah, so essentially, one of them was having. There was going to be these women sent down by a king beyond the wall, who essentially their goals were to seduce various men across the kingdom and essentially try to get money from them. And then that money would therefore be used to. Aha, I found it! I found the thing.
Oh, nice.
So it was called the Witches of King Maladon. And essentially, these women would come down and make allies in the southern kingdoms with hope of building support for an unknown wildling king from the Ice Fangs.
Wow.
And essentially, once the women got close enough to the men, they would make this offer, which was either where the men, to help them out, they'd be like, please, we really need it for so-and-so, for them to get some money from them, and with the promise of eventually being rewarded for it. And it was sort of, I was going to see if they were honest about it or maybe lying, depending on each person.
Right.
Essentially, with that money, the Wildling King would pay for a large mercenary force from Essos, and it would start like an attack on the north. So
Right.
not the craziest, like, some sort of something we've seen in the past games.
Right.
But I wanted to maybe add like a layer of mysticism to it, and maybe, not so much like magic, but a layer of mystery to it.
Always a king beyond the wall type thing is going to be a sort of mysterious, like, oh shit, all right, we got
Yeah.
something united. We're coming back around from this giant magical wall. There's always a little bit of mysticism there.
Yeah, and the idea was that they would maybe be up to even like joining the Seven Kingdoms. So there was like
Ooh.
room for them to maybe not be fully like just like bloodthirsty as we would expect.
Right.
And then my personal like second favorite, which was, I don't know, it was kind of my favorite one, but it was the most far-fetched, as I called it, the Arms of the Seven. They each had like their own names. And this one was about these two brothers from the Iron Islands, who essentially would kind of masquerade as merchants and go around selling these items to different lords across the kingdoms. And they would sort of sell these for cheap, and promise a bunch of things with them, like, oh, they come from Ashai, and they they'll help you with good luck and stuff. But the idea was to sell as many of them as possible. And this is where it goes a little crazy. The idea was that then they would be able to like, here, I haven't actually read these in a bit. But each of the castles would start having like almost like ghostly encounters, like start seeing things, and maybe start getting sick. And the idea was that the two brothers, who are masquerading as the same person, as the same merchant, would
Are they
sort of,
twins?
yes,
Or just okay.
it would raise like, are followers of the drowned god, and essentially are trying to raise like an army of like the dead from like beneath the ocean. And it was kind of, it's a little bit more, it's a lot more magical and out there than the other ones, but I wanted to include one as an option.
Absolutely.
And I thought
you gotta have the sort of like super magical, like we had it sort of at the game's start as well with the Harrenhal event. Could have been a bookending.
Yeah, and I thought the idea would be their goal was to take the Citadel so that they could get more like mystical knowledge and more magical items, and so everyone would sort of be funneled towards Old Town, and this one was a lot more like cut and dry martial, like with a war,
Right.
more so than the other two. Because then my original plan for the one that we ended up taking was a lot simpler and a lot quicker, which was just more cut and dry peasant rebellion, with Aldrich being not Darren, but none of the Essos stuff being involved. It was just more so kidnap nobles, try and almost extort them, and then have it be something that's done with quicker. But then it's sort of like, I don't know, as it started, I started changing my mind on a lot of stuff. And it was kind of nice because like there was a lot of like almost like free reign, because we were such a small group of people, and we could kind of just like shift with whatever would maybe be the coolest and maybe fit the story the most.
That definitely helped a lot, that like it was like the whole Endgame event in general really, I think, breathed life back into the game, but with a sort of like condensed few claims really, compared to like if you know it was game start and everyone's claimed. It was sort of able to sort of, I think if I remember correctly, you sort of just had people sign up at the start, and you went from active claim to active claim. You know, you had something in Lannisport, and then Storm's End, and Maidenpool, and then sort of just jumped around, causing problems.
Yeah, and so essentially it started off with Aldrich half playing as the attorney knight and half sort of infiltrating Pike and Storm's End, and then at the same time there was the people being kidnapped on the roads, like on the King's Road, on the Rose Road. That all started at the same time, and they were set up. There was three set up. There was one south of King's Landing. There was one sort of near the Bloody Gate, and then another one in between the Westerlands and the Reach, all of which got tripped, which was great. But my original plan for the prisoners was, well, originally Darren was supposed to be kidnapped by Aldrich, along with I'm really sorry, Alwyn Rowan. I'm getting his name right. The original plan was to have the two of them kidnapped as the last people to be kidnapped. And then my idea was for them and Lord Baratheon to sort of be the ones to sort of spearhead, like almost like a breakout type thing. And for Aldrich to be a bit more of a conventional villain, like to come out as, you know, the leader of the rats more definitively, rather than like, is he not type deal.
Right. So did it throw sort of a wrench into your plans when Aldrich like just immediately won like a big, almost realm-wide tournament, and then was asked to be Darren's teacher?
No, that was legitimately the perfect start. I couldn't have asked for a better start. I was so happy when that happened. Great. I was like, this is like so sick. Exciting. Yeah, I was like, this, I could not have asked for like a better start, like with 100%. So I couldn't like, so it didn't like throw things off, but like that was asked, and I was like, oh, perfect. This is an in for him to, you know, be close to Darren, and then be easier for him to kidnap him. And so the way I was going to do it is I was going to have, this is not something I got to explore, and I'm a little bit disappointed, but I was going to have one of the rats, and I completely scrapped this idea, but I was going to have one of them be, I always forget which one got captured, but I think Cheese got away.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to have him be one of, like, Aldrich's, like, second in commands, and is that how that's how Darren gets kidnapped, is that he knows the passages in the Red Keep, and the whole thing was going to be that he's like trying to like fix what he feels guilty for what happened, and I was going to have him be a character that could be explored, where he it feels bad for the things he did, but he doesn't necessarily disagree. And so that's why like it made sense for him to align with what was going on, and I thought it'd be like a cool throwback, because my whole idea and my whole thematic idea was this was meant to be like an echo of the dance, and sort of the consequences of it coming to haunt the Targaryens and the nobles again. And so that's why I thought it made sense maybe for him to come back. And oh,
I love that.
That's why
it would have been great to see Cheese, the return of Cheese.
I know. I thought it would have been cool, and I was sort of trying to decide a time to bring him in, and it just sort of just never came up. And then I had the the fellow who came in and was killing Rowan's left and right,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
Jesus, that guy had something.
I know, he was like unexpected, but I liked him. And then I had
Oh, absolutely.
sort of the Essos stuff come in uh, a little bit, but the biggest change was with Aldrich, who I had a definitive backstory set for and written up.
Mhm.
Um, but over time, I started almost being like, but could he be Darren? And by the end of it, I was actually starting to, because it was great because I hadn't definitively revealed it. Like he'd said to people that he
Right.
was, but it never was really decided. And I kind of got to a point where I was like, yeah, he might be Darren the Daring, but I didn't actually even know myself.
Right.
Honestly, I was kind of, because
Finally revealed.
yeah, it's kind of a cop out because it's not a definitive answer, but I think it's more fun.
Well, but that's how it is. Like, part of me was wondering if that was,
Well,
if you were still figuring out as well, like whether, you know,
well, to
whether
me,
that could be true or not.
well, to me, it almost didn't matter whether he was at the end
Right.
because to me, the end result was the same, where he was this man who had these different identities with him in him, and he almost couldn't even tell himself who he was.
Right.
And so I wanted him to be this person who had like a lot of internal wrestling
Mhm.
between what he should do and how far he should go. Um, and it does disappoint me because I was sort of like teasing him having like he had a Valyrian steel sword.
Mhm.
And my plan was always for him to die.
Oh,
Was
I
always for
see.
him to die and for the Valyrian steel sword to be like almost like a prize for
Final.
whoever managed to kill him.
Right.
And that's why I was trying to build him up as this big like duelist, was that I wanted it to be like this big end game, not almost like a boss fight, but like not
I
like
mean,
in a video game, but like in A Song of Ice
right.
and Fire, like great duelist dies type thing.
Exactly. And it certainly helped to sort of build that up that he kept just fucking destroying in every tournament he went to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Like,
obviously he had some
the
mechanical
roles
help.
were on his side.
Yeah, he had some mechanical help, but like it was meant to reflect how he
Sure,
was. Yeah.
yeah. But like there's a good amount of luck there too that just worked out really
Yeah.
well, I think. I love that.
And there was also a reason for Maidenpool. Um,
Oh,
and it
like
was,
specifically as the
yes,
target.
yeah, and it was because for the backstory I had picked for him, he wasn't even called Aldrich, and he's not from the sisters. He was from the Riverlands, just like a lowborn guy named Edric, which
Mhm.
isn't that far off Aldrich, but that wasn't actually on purpose. And essentially, I had him he was raised in the slums of Maidenpool. Um,
Oh.
and during the war, during the dance, he served for Lord Wallace Mooton in the war, and Lord Wallace Mooton, I believe in canon, died trying to kill Sunfire at Rook's Rest.
Mm.
And so what I had was that he was one of the people trying to kill Sunfire, and so in a couple of role plays, it was revealed he was covered in burns. Um,
Right.
and so that's
Oh, of
so
course.
the I backstory was that he had um, pretty much almost died trying to kill Sunfire along with all these other soldiers and knights who got completely destroyed.
Right.
Um, and Tiberius, who was the guy from Essos, who was sort of the leader of the rats along with Aldrich, was the
Mhm.
one who found him and sort of brought him back to health over a couple of years. And he sort of rebuilt his strength. And the idea was that Edric would have been sort of starting out like by certainly like trying to like be charitable and sort of like almost like a soup kitchen type thing, like helping
Right.
people out, like boots on the ground, and then returns to Maidenpool and finds everything that happened and all these people he knew who died, and is what
Mhm.
builds up this anger for him against like the Targaryens and the nobles and the Mootons,
Right.
and it's sort of what led to what happened later on. But what made it fun with Darren was that he started being conflicted and being
Right.
like, maybe they're not all bad. Um, and yeah, and that's where sort of him being Darren kind of like that was always
Wow.
the idea, but him actually being Darren, I was kind of like, oh, maybe you know what? It's
This could
actually
work,
yeah,
yeah.
this could work, and it could be a lot of fun. But like I said, I almost think that it's better working with the idea that maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but in the end,
Right.
does it really matter?
Well, especially because what it really comes down to is whether everyone believes him.
Exactly.
If he reveals that, um, everyone's gonna have their doubts in the back of their mind, no matter how much they're like, "Oh, I think this is Darren." There's always that bit that's like, "What if this is just some fucking guy who just, you know, um, who just happened to sort of be able to fall into this position of essentially power in King's
Mhm.
Landing as the mentor of Darren the Young Dragon." Which is interesting too because he was always your Darren was always uh, clearly distrusted by a lot of people, like the king not wanting to make him a Kingsguard when that was requested by Darren, and then of course uh, Centrist's character really just
Rosalind Blackwood, yeah.
constantly, yeah, Rosalind Blackwood was just not his fan for sure.
Mhm.
And so I have a question for you about that as well, actually.
Sure.
Just in general, in sort of him being around the court, having this sense of like a lot of people not liking him, but then his target, so to speak, in terms of eventually capturing Darren the younger. Um, what did he think of Darren? Like, because Darren adored him, like really looked up to him and was like, "This is my guy. People don't like him, but he's teaching me how to fight. He's there for me when everyone goes on a big trip to Lannisport and to the Reach when I'm not allowed to go. He was sort of like, this is my only friend who remained." Um, what did spending time with young Darren sort of make him want to rethink trying to capture him at all, or was he on
Well,
board the whole time? Like, look, this is just
well,
some kid.
that's why it didn't happen. Was because he
Mhm,
did like Darren, and he did like all the things that he did say were true, and him
mhm.
believing that he would be a good king. And it was, it's obviously if someone's named after you, it's a little bit like, oh, okay, well,
Right.
it might be a bit of a bias. And
Exactly.
so him not being kidnapped was a direct result of how much he liked Darren.
Mhm.
Um, and he liked like others as well too. He liked like Alwyn as well too.
Oh yeah.
And there were a couple of people who treated him pretty well, who he was okay with,
Mhm.
but it was more so Darren himself who he felt conflicted by, because the other people he could look past it,
Right.
and knew what it is that he had to do and what his role was. But with Darren, it did make things a little bit more complicated, and that's why I was probably gonna have him reveal himself as Darren to Darren the
Right.
Younger at Strong Song, and then
Oh shit.
sort of pivot from there depending on how that turned out. That was going to be the
Right.
next thing that happened.
That would have been incredible as well. And because he revealed himself to a few people before we ended up ending. I think Lord Hightower, if I
Yeah,
remember
but
correctly,
yeah, Lord Hightower and his brother,
and his brother. Yeah.
as well as I'm gonna forget his name. Give me a second. He'd made a friend with a. Oh God, I'm really sorry if you're listening, but I think it was a Fowler. I don't. Hold up. This is actually gonna bother me now. But yeah, he had revealed himself at Dragonstone as well too. So
Right.
about 4 people.
Was this Guion Fowler?
Yes. Sorry, this is just a quick interruption from editing Bob. It was not a Fowler, it was a Swift. My bad.
Nice.
And yeah, so there was a small group of people who knew.
A
And
very own, a
yeah,
very own LP now, of course.
yeah. And so, um, yeah, there was like a couple of people who knew, but what would have happened from that, I kind of think never really got to get explored as much as it could have been, which is kind of a shame.
Right.
Because I think it could have been really interesting to see maybe if somebody had tried to out him, what could have happened if people would have taken it badly, etc.
Absolutely.
But that didn't really get to happen. Um, and I think, like I said, I mean, what do you think Darren would have done? The
Oh
younger
my goodness.
Darren.
So this is tough. I think this is one of those responses that I would have had to like
Think on.
sit and think on and take some time to write up. Is like after the reveal and be like, all right, shit, I didn't see this coming. How would Darren respond to this? I think he would. So first of all, he'd be very conflicted. He wouldn't believe it on a dime. I definitely think um, he would eventually believe it because he would want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense. Like I think um, he's his namesake, right?
Yeah.
For one thing, and so he grew up hearing both horror stories of the dance as well as like um, the stories from bards and singers and musicians and stuff who usually tend to make these things much more like stories of heroes and excitement and stuff. And I think he really grew up um, with this sense of um, Darren, as well as just sort of like this ideal like Targaryen knight who's like, oh, this is the the ancestors that he wants to be, that he could have been, and that was something he struggled with when he fell in love with Nymeria Martell as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just because a big part of him, I had this whole RP with Mads and with Norlium, um, going sort of when we were headed to Dorne for the very first time, where sort of Darren was saying, you know, I I see this big land that none of my ancestors were able to conquer, and now we don't even have dragons, but I want to conquer it, and will you guys stay by me if we do this if we do this shit?
Mm-hmm.
And so a big part of him wanted to sort of like get his name in the history books, and I think he sees Darren, um, the Elder, Darren the Daring, as that person who made it into the history books, whether he was on the right side or the wrong side of history. The
Mm-hmm.
Greens versus the Blacks is definitely a contentious issue throughout his entire like childhood. Um, but sort of the person behind the sides of the war is what he was really interested in, and I think um, he would come around to believing that this was in fact Darren the Daring having returned. That being said, um, part of him would of course be, well, so this is the question too. When he reveals himself, how much does he just say I'm was the plan just to have him say I'm Darren the
So
Daring?
yeah, it was gonna be like a like a frog on the water type thing. So first
Right.
Darren, and then here's the real curveball. What I kind of decided in like the last month,
Mm-hmm.
I came up with this plan because I thought it would be really sick. Was that Aegon would die probably
Right.
in like a poisoning, and if that succeeds or not obviously
Mm-hmm.
depends. But the idea was that for it to be attempted, and then if
Right.
it was successful, in his grief, while he's in grief, Darren the Daring would be like, listen, I have something else to talk to you about. And then that's where it would be revealed that
Right.
he's with the rats, but he's now like conflicted, and almost like him seeking mercy. But then he offers him, depending on sort of like how things are feeling, he
Mm-hmm.
would maybe almost pull like a Palpatine Darth Vader thing and be like, listen, you make me hand to the king, and we can really change some stuff for the better. I have the
Right.
troops and the numbers I can give you. We can like really change things, and we can do this together, Darren and Darren, and we can bring the Targaryens back for real, like back how it used to be, sort of deal.
Right.
And that was gonna be like, my prediction was that your Darren would have refused, and that would have
Mm-hmm.
been what sort of fractured them, and would have led to
Right.
other Darren really being like the villain, but not like evil villain,
Right.
more so
No, just
antagonist. Uh,
yeah.
that would have led to the real ending, and him probably dying.
Right.
But I thought it left some room for things to maybe happen,
Oh,
and like almost like an evil timeline, like a video game.
yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
like, let's do this together. Make me hand, you be king. Let's do
Oh,
this. Like,
God damn. And I'll tell you what, because I think in the end, you're probably right. I think I would have had Darren eventually refused, just because the rats really did a number on him in terms of like, I mean, up to this point, he still doesn't even know if Jace is alive.
Yeah.
He doesn't know if uh, names Lisara
Uh-huh.
is alive. If
All of House
who else
Flint.
was captured? Yeah,
The
you know, the
entirety of
whole
House Flint.
the entire yeah. Like, there's all these people, family, friends who have been captured. He doesn't know we're alive. He, you know, he lost people, people who died protecting him. His
Mhm.
Kingsguard at Maidenpool.
Mhm.
The rats really have done a number on him, and to find out that Aldrich slash now he would know Darren was
A part of that.
working with them the whole time, like sitting right next to him, that would really tear him apart.
Mhm.
But there it wouldn't be an easy decision, because I think a big part of him, as we were talking about earlier, was sort of thinking like, I want to be the Targaryen that goes down in the history books. I want to be the dragon. We don't have dragons. I want to, you know, there's the quote from him in canon where, you know, he's trying to conquer Dorne, and they say something like, "Oh, you know, where's your dragon?" And he says, "I'm standing right in front of you." And there's
Which is
that sort of,
badass.
yeah, love that quote. I'll tell you what, I so wanted to be able to to use slash steal that quote at some point. I don't know if I ever did, or had something maybe similar in like a much less badass situation. Like, I'm kind of like a dragon too. But I so wanted, like, after the egg. So okay, this is something as well, and I'll get into this later. But like, let's say the egg didn't hatch. I wanted him to have a moment of like, yeah, I don't have a dragon, but guess what? I'm the goddamn dragon now, or something like that.
It's all good. I'm still here.
Right, exactly. Don't worry, I didn't burn up. Who knows how that would have gone? Um, but yeah, essentially, where like he would have had this offer from old Darren to, you know, the Palpatine Darth Vader offer, to sort of say we can rule together. And essentially, what sucks for young Darren is that that's what he wanted before he knew, or in this timeline knows, that old Darren actually was helping the rats. He did see himself with Aldrich by his side for his reign, you know, with Arthur and Alwyn, and you know, and he'd be married to Nymeria. Like, he had this whole sort of um fantasy future planned out, which the first sort of wrench in that plan was when Alwyn told him he didn't want to be a Kingsguard because he was in love. Um, and that was something that Darren really struggled with as well, where he was sort of saying like, "Ah, shit, okay. It turns out I can't just plan my future and have everything like you're gonna be this and you're gonna be this." Um, so it was. So this is something that he would struggle with, and I think a big part of him would want to just think like, would it just be easier if I could just say yes and rule with Darren, and we'd be the two Darrens, and the rats can do their thing. But I think in the end he would be like, this is too fucked up. I feel really betrayed, and I could never trust him again. And I think that would be how it, pretty much as you said as well, how it breaks apart and fractures between them, and becomes they become the foils and the antagonists to each other.
Have them play off each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
I do have one question.
Sure.
Just I think it should be a pretty quick one. But regarding the dragon egg and the attempt to hatch it, there was obviously a plot that was about to happen where we were going to try to hatch the egg. You were a mod at the time. Would there have been a chance that it did hatch into just like a baby little, you know, not
I honestly, I don't think I would have been
lizard?
involved in the decision making
Right.
for that, just because I was in it and I was
Right.
there. If I had to guess, I honestly think so, because I mean it was the end of the
Mhm.
game, and it's not like the dragon would have been big enough to warrant any
Right.
like mechs or anything like that of its own.
Exactly. A little lizard.
Yeah, so I really do think there probably was a possibility, but I also think
Nice.
there's maybe like an equal possibility of it having gone wrong
Right.
some way. Like, I don't know. There's obviously the stuff with the dragons is not fully explained, so maybe
Mhm.
throwing a dragon egg into a dormant volcano might cause some shit.
Right.
You, who knows? Maybe that's how the Doom started, right? Like, I don't
Yeah,
know. Um,
exactly.
so yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would like to think so. I would have maybe fought for it a little bit and been like, "Come on,
Right.
you know, it's the
Add
end of the
some,
game."
some flavor to
Yeah, there's
it.
like 12 of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe. I honestly think so. If I had to take a guess,
Nice.
I would say
Yeah,
yes.
that was something I was super curious about, was
Hmm.
like, because then that sort of dictates all the next steps of like, do we have something to bring over and be like, we're back?
Yeah, yeah.
So
And I want to explain to anyone who was kidnapped. The plan was never to kill any of the people who were kidnapped. You were never really in any danger.
oh,
Just because that's if there's something that I felt maybe that I would have fixed or like done differently is I felt like I didn't give the people who were kidnapped enough. And it felt like,
okay.
and there were maybe a couple people who like when they did get kidnapped, they just like stopped playing, and I felt really bad about that
Oh,
because
right.
I was like, "There's stuff to do, I promise." Like
Right.
you're not just gonna do prisoner RP for two
Of
years in
course.
character. There will be things to do, but I don't know.
Gets busy and
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. Yeah, and I had some stuff going with some of the prisoners, but obviously not with everyone.
Mhm.
Um, so that's maybe something I would have perhaps done differently.
Sure.
But overall, I was very happy with how things turned out. I thought there was like it was fun having like the hype around like a Lucas Mooten Aldrich duel.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh my God.
like it, and the
Was so
whole
hoping for that.
and the whole
Oh,
like
that would have been so good.
and I think the thing I'm proudest of, and I think that we all should be, all the people who took part, is to me this is the thing in the games that has felt the closest to something that could have happened in canon and
Yeah,
felt very George R. R. Martin-y. Um,
absolutely.
and it's not like far fetched. There's no like it's nothing too crazy. And there have been like peasant rebellions, so to say, like in canon, but
Mhm.
not to the extent of this. Even if this
Right. They
wasn't,
usually get kind of squashed pretty early.
yeah, yeah. And I thought, I don't know. I was very much like it definitely evolved with time, but I felt like it was really cool how, at least to me, this felt like a very like um the word I'm looking for, like authentic. It felt very
Yeah.
authentic to A Song of Ice and Fire, and
Yeah.
I think that's what made it so enjoyable. And it's really interesting because I think there's only such a small group of us that kind of get that, who got to play in
Yeah.
it, and I think it's really cool that that's something that only maybe a couple of us got to experience.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like it was something that for me sort of first of all like put air into the game again,
Hmm.
where like I was sort of I felt like I was treading water a little bit. I wasn't doing too much. Like I started the game off as Frey, and then I had some really busy stuff out of in
Hmm.
real life, and so I had to unclaim them for a little bit, and then I was jumping around a little bit. Like I claimed some of the Freys back when Telluril had claimed them, and then I was just playing sort of the King's Landing Adam Frey's family, and then sort of there was the application went up for Darren, and part of me was like, all right, look, maybe this is a way to change things up, breathe some life back into it, and I was like, all right, I can be really excited to have this new character, and then on top of that, you suddenly have this Endgame event that you put together, and it was just I suddenly like I was excited to go back to do writing to start RPs and I felt really immersed back in, as you said, it really felt sort of much more like authentic to the world of Ice and Fire. It wasn't just a wedding simulator, as
Exactly.
as sometimes things get to be, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that either. But
It's good to have a
it's
switch every once
just
in a while.
exactly. I felt like it really it brought things back, and it made me excited. And it was what was obviously too bad that we never got to see an end to the end game. I hope this can serve as a as a sort of a cap for it. But I definitely felt so much more excited and interested about even Ninepenny Kings and the little Dun Peak Varner conflict, and like I just this end game really, I think, brought my brought the spark back for writing. So I have you to thank for that.
I mean, hell, I can thank you guys equally for that because I hadn't played for like a year and a half, and then this was kind of what brought me back, and I was like, damn, I miss writing.
Right.
This is what I miss, and it's nice because I think as much as like ATD might get knocked for being like a little bit boring,
Mhm.
because there wasn't really like a big war or so to speak, like like there was in the other games or any like major conflict that was centered around it.
Right.
Um, it didn't end the same way that like Century of Blood and 7K had. It
Right.
really felt like it had a bit more of an organic ending. And I
Yeah.
honestly do think that like had interest come back in a larger sense, I think the game could have gone on for a lot longer with the
Oh yeah.
aftermath of this. And obviously, it would have been harder to pull people in because it's more disconnected from canon at that point. But I do think
Right.
that you could have built something off of what happened in the end game and continued from there, had it been able
Absolutely.
to happen.
Yeah. No, I totally think so too. It really it had this story ending to it, like this book ending of, we started with the dance and we're ending on the um the dance of Darrens, I guess, instead of the dance
Yeah.
of and that sort of it felt like it could have opened a new chapter. And yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Yeah, and you mean I like I don't know. It is definitely a shame that it didn't get to finish properly and kind of just ended right in the middle
Right.
almost. But I'm not like sad either because it did last a while, and it's not like I haven't been enjoying Ninepenny Kings, and
Right.
it's just how these things work out sometimes. But
Yeah,
there is a little part of me that's a little bit sad.
definitely. And I'm really glad that um, that we have this little session as well to sort of talk about what could have been, and and
Actually, end things off.
and ends, yeah, give it a little bit of a send off that I think it absolutely deserves.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it's not just us. There were so many. Well, not so many, but there was other people who were involved. We can like
Yeah,
shout out Norlium, shout out Mads, shout out Cirque, shout out
Sin as
Centrist,
well, and
yeah,
yeah,
Wiccan, yeah.
centrist
There's
Wiccan, yeah,
and it's
countless,
yeah.
countless countable, but because there was a smaller group, but truly everyone who was still writing was just helping to create one of, I think, my favorite stories of these games, full stop, that I've ever been a part of. So
Yeah,
thank you to everyone
this
who
is
is
definitely
still
up there
there.
for me as well,
Hmm.
100%. Um, yeah, and hopefully, if anyone has any other questions and you were involved, I am very happy now that this is out to talk about it because I was kind of wanting to save it for this episode. And I think there's a lot of like what ifs that can kind of be explored. So
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe we gotta get like a chat going at some point. And yeah, I mean, thank you so much for everyone who also allowed me to start it off. And to the mods who let me sort of bend the rules a
yeah.
couple of times. uh,
That makes for the best stories.
yeah, and Steven, I'm sorry that a bunch of characters' deaths got retconned, and thank you for toughing it out and taking the death. You're a real one for that. That had to be said.
Nice.
But yeah, before we wrap up, is there anything sort of that you wanted to say, just about your own claim done now, or anything with the end game? Sort of the floor is yours.
Oh,
You have time to
sure.
sort of tell people things.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yeah, I'll say for anyone in who is in any way, okay, I'll do two little advertisements. The
Yeah, go
first
ahead.
one, so yeah, I currently play House Done, a little house in the Reach that has existed as stewards for a very long time, but has only very recently, in the past less than 100 years or so, been Lord of Dunstonbury. So I got a little feud going on with Houses Varner and House Peak, as we are all sort of the landholders of what used to be Peak's lands before they helped the Blackfires and sort of fell from grace in every way possible. That's been so much fun, so I want to give a little shout out to both Dom and Strategos for sort of, you know, co-writing all of these incredible sort of backstories and putting this all together, and to tell everyone, if you'd like to get involved in really petty feud shit, you're welcome to. If you're married to any of our characters and don't want to and want to be totally left out, that is fine too. Don't feel like you have to be sort of roped into our bullshit. So feel free to let us know if any of that is something you want to try to stay out of or get involved in. It's been a lot of fun. And then the other thing I'll advertise really quickly is the WFFL. We got a fantasy football. We got a fantasy football league going. If you're interested, reach out. We had one last year. It was a ton of fun. Stank won, despite having had no previous NFL or football experience. So don't feel like you need to know anything about it to join in and have fun. It's a great time.
And I'm gonna jump in then because I just thought of this now. But if anyone's interested in a basketball fantasy league, please let me know because I would love to do that.
Nice.
And that's it. That's all I have to say.
That's it. I'll join in. I'll I'll be the first to jump in and join with that.
Let's go. Awesome. Well, Tortoise, thank you so much for sitting down to do this. We've been talking for a little while, but I think it was all well worth it. It's been
so much fun.
Yeah, and maybe I'll have you back on at some point to talk about the Duns.
Nice, I would love to.
All right, have a nice day, man.
Have a good one. Thank you.